Good job on that. All right, welcome. Broadcasting. So we're doing it live once more in the new year. Yeah. So welcome to Salient Points number 15. This is your episode for January 14th, 2018. Oh, I put 2017 on the notes, but it's for 2018. Don't be mad at yourself. So it's the first episode of 2018, and I'm your host Carlos Macias, along with
co-host Dalan Kirkwood.
Dalan Kirkwood over there. Thanks for joining me again, Dalan. So we'll try to set this off correct, you know. And one of the ways I always like to kind of poke you a little bit. I know in the new year you plan on getting a Switch, right? So
sometimes
there's
I already picked up a game and no Switch.
Yeah, good job having Zelda, but no Switch to play it on. So I appreciate the irony on that. But you know what? You might want to consider importing. There's this thing in Japan called the comfortable hands-free stand. You might want to consider importing that, Dalan. Now, according to Nintendo Life, the stand offers between 7 to 14 centimeters of movement and can be rotated in 360 degrees. You know, what more could you ask for? And it's a thing that's kind of like a harness. It goes over your neck, and you have the Switch in front of you, and you could, you know, unhook the Joy-Cons and, you know, play freely, Dalan. I'm sure you will not look foolish in public wearing that.
Man, it looks like somebody got stuck in some handlebars. I might as well just buy the umbrella hat that Japan decided to make. So I think I'm good.
You know what? We'll see how cheap it is. Maybe if I get it for you, you'll wear it. You'll have it on. Maybe you wear it on the show one of these days.
I will put it on I will put it on your daughter before I put it on myself.
Okay, good job, Dalan. Good job. All right, we'll start off with one of the big topics. It's about God of War, believe it or not. You know, the God of War is going to be on the February 2018 Game Informer cover. They just announced that. But one of the key points, I saw this a few days ago on Twitter, was that according to one Colin Moriarty, and I know he's kind of a controversial figure for whatever reason. I don't know why. But no, he is actually. He is. You're not on Twitter, Dalan. You use the internet, but you're not on the internet. He's kind of. That's what I call it. But anyways, he's previously a co-host of two popular PlayStation podcasts, so he has some good, has some good sources. But he said on Twitter, a trusted industry source tells me that God of War's PS4 pre-orders are very soft. Sad to hear. I'm still hopeful and even confident that it'll be great whenever it comes out. Now, my question to you, Dalan, is the franchise in trouble? You know, it's been a while. Last game we got wasn't a numbered sequel. It was a God of War Ascension. So, you know, this one is kind of like, and this one, I don't even think it has a subtitle as far as I understand it. It's just going to be God of War. But is it in trouble based on pre-orders? Can you really tell that maybe it's not going to be a big success as it has been in the past for Sony?
Honestly, I do think that God of War is kind of losing its steam. I mean, they really tried to make their little side stories for God of War, but there's only so much you could do about a guy who wants to kill all the gods. And after you kill all the gods, you're still making games. So I think there's something fundamentally wrong with their ability to continue to create stories. I mean, this looks like they actually created this looks like an end game content to end all end game contents. And if they actually build it right, they might be able to build more off of it.
Wait, are you thinking that this is not supposed to be the last one? I think it's supposed to be a reimagining of the series. They're bringing it back, but in a new way.
I understand it's not supposed to be the last one, but it's like they're what's the word I'm looking for? I want to say their final attempt, their gung-ho attempt at trying to revitalize the whole series.
Okay.
And it's like if it doesn't work, that's just it. It is their trump card. It is their last resort. If this fails, they probably won't make any more God of Wars. But
yeah. I mean, it's gotta be a hit. But so far, with what they showed, it looks pretty good. The graphics look good, and I think it's from as far as I understand, it's from the same team. So at least it has that pedigree. I mean, they haven't had the original guy, David Jaffe, since 2, I think. So the original creator has been long gone, and God of War 2 was amazing. God of War 3 was pretty good. I mean, maybe it was a little. I think God of War 2 was definitely the pinnacle, but 3 was excellent still, and the graphics were amazing. It went into PS3. But yeah, I mean, you know, I mean, it's right what you said is like, how much story can you get out of a guy that's constantly be or you know whatever he says, just kind of he's in a constant rage, and I know that was wrong. So whoever wants to correct me, I'm fine with that. But something of that ilk, he just kind of is constantly yelling. So, and it's something that you appreciated at first because it's like, oh, this is a cool game. It's just some aggressive guy with weapons that swing out of his body or whatever it is, and you know, you can only sustain that for so long. So exactly. You know, and I think they made 5 games total, maybe more than that. I know there was like a mobile.
There were the 2 PSP games.
Yeah, there was a 4, you know, got 1, 2, 3, and then Ascension, and then the two PSP ones, and then there was one for the flip phones. If you guys can go all the way back, so God of War's been with us for a while. I mean, since 2015, I believe was the original game. So I think this will be a good chance.
Did you say 2015 was the original game?
2005.
Oh, thank you.
So the series has been with us for a while, and you know, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to this new reinvention of the franchise, and I hope it does well for them. And maybe this is why they're. I think it's supposed to be out in spring, so I think it should be with us pretty soon. So I hope this God of War reveal and Game Informer kind of gives us a good glimpse of it, and you know, maybe it pushes the pre-orders up a little bit. You know, I'm not the biggest fan of pre-orders. I hate pre-orders. I never pre-order anything, but as far as the mainstream is concerned, I think it's a good indicator as to, you know, how popular a game will be. So the fact that the sales are soft are, you know, a little concerning, but maybe they can turn it around once they start previewing it a bit more.
And on your note of talking about Colin Moriarty, I remember seeing a little tweet by him stating that he was actually kind of moving away from pre-ordering games, but then he actually flipped his idea of how.
That's always been his stance, yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's I'm not about pre-orders, but sometimes I am. You know, sometimes when I know it's a small batch game like the Yakuza games, you probably want to get a pre-order in because they're not gonna make hundreds and thousands of copies or millions of copies. They're just like your local GameStop might get 2 copies or 3.
But it also helps in regards to actually purchasing the games, though, because you don't have
because of your layaway plan. But my reason to that is be an adult, budget, and it'll be all right. You should be able to spend $60 on, you know, not a moment's notice, but at least, you know, hey, that game's out in a couple months. I'll have it allocated. I'll have it allocated.
Oh, so. But there you go. You said in a couple of months. I mean, over that period of time, instead of having it in your pocket and potentially having to spend it on something else, maybe you could go use that layaway idea.
How about this? Games are a very expensive hobby, right? It's not necessarily for everybody to buy games. If you can't afford it, like if you're really thinking, oh, I gotta pay my water bill versus I gotta buy a game, you probably should not be buying a game and you should be paying a water bill. So ultimately, all the money goes somewhere, of course, right? But it's an expensive hobby. To me, it's more of a thing where, like, I know what GameStop does with that. They kind of gain interest on that, you know, like they get the pre-order and like they're putting it away in a bank account where they're like, we're gonna get interest until this game's actually released, and we have to provide this for a person.
Hey, Carlos. Good reality check. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm just saying. But hey, speaking of reinventions, though, Dalan, what's the next story we got here?
Okay, I was laughing too hard about that. But I don't know what you mean lack thereof. But I do know that for the Zelda Breath of the Wild, or at least the Zelda series makers, apparently they're heavily debating and probably will go this way going forward, just based on their statements, that they may no longer have heavy dungeons in Zeldas and may just continue with their good free roaming action that they have. They're very wide open spaces, and I think they appreciate their formula. I mean, the producer, I can't say his name correctly, but I'm going to try to, and I apologize if I ruin it. Hidemaru Fujibayashi, or something like that, told IGN in an interview that it was all according to plan to make it so free, being that you can pretty much solve the game however you want. And I mean, like, you could just throw stuff together. And apparently even the creators didn't know what people were going to do.
You're talking about Breath of the Wild, right?
Yeah, Well, what do you think I was talking about? I did say
I
that,
don't
didn't
know.
I? I'm pretty sure I said that.
I hope you did.
I'm pretty sure I said
I think you just went. They just. All right, I'll believe you. I'll believe you. Breath of the Wild.
All
Let's hear about
right,
Breath
we're
of the
talking
Wild.
about Zelda Breath of the Wild, but stating going from Breath of the Wild forward. How about that? That they're just debating on keeping it as this open world formula, and I don't know. Do you think they've struck gold with this formula, Carlos?
Well, I haven't beat the game. We did our top 2017 games of the year, and it was a little lower on my list. If it had stuck more to the old formula, to there's 8 dungeons or 10 dungeons or whatever it is, I think I would have actually beaten it. I think I would have actually made it through. Even Skyward Sword, where they were kind of making more of a push towards an open world Zelda, where you were kind of going from different worlds to different, world to world. Even in that one, I think that one was a little limited on dungeons. But yeah, I don't know. To me, I like that structure. I do like that dungeon structure, and I did enjoy Breath of the Wild enough to even make it in my top 5. I respected it. I loved it, but to have been even higher, I think it would have required for them to have to stick to like the traditional formula where it's like, here's 8 dungeons, 8 amazing dungeons, because I still remember even on the Wii, you know what? And I don't go that back. I apologize with the Zelda series, but I mean, I beat Ocarina of Time after I beat the Wii one. What was it? Twilight Princess. So I think the first Zelda I beat was Twilight Princess. So I apologize. I don't go that far back with it. But I have beat a bunch of them, and I love that structure. I really love the Twilight Princess structure where you're going from dungeon to dungeon. I got to solve these different puzzles. And, in Breath of the Wild, I think they try to placate some of that with it's like 200 mini dungeons, but it's like, you know what? It's too big. I haven't even beaten it. It's too big. So
it's the 200 mini dungeons that really throw you off, because I know that with all the other Zelda games that I've been playing them for quite some time. I mean, I beat the ones on Game Boy. I think one of my favorite ones was DX. But it was actually a great idea to be able to get through a dungeon by needing a specific item. That really made you want to progress to find that item.
Yeah, and that's not in Breath of the Wild. Yeah, you're exactly right on that. Yeah. So I think that is one thing I miss. That is one thing I miss, where like you got to get this item, and then this item will make it so much easier to go about things. Breath of the Wild, it has its pros and cons, right? Because since you don't need that specific item, then it's kind of like, well, find a way around it. It's like, well, I kind of like having to find the piece of the puzzle and then getting there and solving the next part of it.
Yeah, so don't get me wrong. I love the new open world aspect, but there should just be dungeons that you can't beat without certain items, and they should have the bigger dungeons that are still there. I think in this case they had like 4 major dungeons and then the 200 mini dungeons or whatever the number was. But for me, I just like the bigger dungeons and the need to have specific equipment to be able to overcome those obstacles. And being able to get through the dungeons however you want, it's fine and dandy and probably fun to try and break the game as well as you possibly could, but there's just something lacking without that small direction. So.
Well, we live in a world overrun by millennials, and millennials, they just want to do things whenever they want it, whenever they feel like it. So I understand that this is the way going forward. And I think a lot of people did like that. And if anything, we did talk about it, but it harkens back to the original Legend of Zelda, where it was kind of like, go anywhere you want and figure this out. Of course, over time, it feels like, well, I go to this dungeon first and then that one. But ultimately, like, if you don't know anything about the original Legend of Zelda and you go into it with fresh eyes, you're kind of like, oh, okay, where do I go? I just go anywhere. There's no directions. There's no nothing. And that's kind of how Breath of the Wild is. Of course, it has some sort of directions, but ultimately it is harkening back to those days. So I think what will happen is, maybe the next Zelda will be a huge open world like this one, but it might not be till Switch 2. And
Switch 2. Good job. They're not going to call it Switch 2. They're
whatever they're going to. I get that, but it's just the moniker for now, right? Whatever the next version is, Dalan. Don't get all, what do you call it? Literal with me, all right? It's fine. It's not going to be Switch 2. Whatever they're gonna call it, the succession. All right, if you want me to, whatever's next. All right, if you want me to give you that whole long title of it. But anyways, so for Switch 2, I think we'll get the next Zelda, and then from then, between that time, maybe we will get a kind of a classic or traditional Zelda where it's like, here you go, 8 dungeons, beat it. 10 hours, you know, so I'll be happy then, and that'll probably make my top 5.
All right, so what do you have next on our list?
So what we got next is a PUBG related, man. You know, this game does not go away, even in the new year. It doesn't go away. So according to PUBG don't quit. So according to Invent Global, which is I think some maybe European website or a website somewhere else, interviewed Chang Han Kim, who is the CEO of the Pub Corporation or the PUBG Corporation, said the following regarding it showing up on other systems besides Xbox One. He said, as it's going to be an exclusive title on Xbox One for some time, we'd like to focus on completing the Xbox One PUBG for now. If we have the opportunity, the final goal would be to launch the title on every platform. Early access on Steam and game preview on Xbox One are like pre-release, so they don't have a restriction on quality. However, PlayStation is very strict about this. There were cases where a game took 6 months more to launch even when it was already completed. We are still in the stage of learning the console development environment and console gamers' taste. We need to think about other platforms after evaluating and completing the Xbox One version first. So they're saying they're at least going to get PUBG to Xbox One 1.0, I'm guessing. They're at least going to get it to that state. And then, you know, there's some rumors that it might go to Switch, which is like, you know, based on how it's running on Xbox One, I don't know how you're going to get it on Switch. But one interesting quote out of this, though, which I kind of like, but I could kind of see the downside to it is, you know, my question is Sony making a mistake, missing out on a popular game by being, quote unquote, strict on quality? What do you think about that statement that he made in that deal?
Well, I understand their need for quality for the PlayStation, but I mean, everybody's getting in on the PUBG bandwagon, so why wait for it? I mean, everybody else is doing it along the lines. Let them improve their quality. I mean, they don't have to.
Well, one of the key things for this one was that, of course, there's an exclusivity happening on Xbox. Microsoft paid for limited time to have it on the Xbox, right? So that's part of it. So it's kind of weird for him to say, but maybe that's what it was. Maybe they wanted to get it on PlayStation and on Xbox, and Sony was like, no. Okay, what version are we getting of this? And they're like, you're just getting an early copy of it, or early access. And Sony was like, no. PUBG went to Xbox, and Xbox was like, we could use some more games. Let's get this on there in whatever state you order it. But I'm sorry, I interrupted, Dalan.
No, that was good. My thing wasn't very important. So go ahead, continue. That is perfectly fine.
Yeah, you know, I think it's a good statement, and it's one that Sony can make from up high, right? When they're number one, they can kind of set the standards and be like, I mean, we don't need hand-me-down versions. We give us a legit version. Once you can get to 1.0, once you can get into a less buggy state of being, you can drop it on our system. So I think it's good to know that, you know, this is kind of like one of those maybe sort of backhanded compliment where they're like, we went to Sony, they're very strict on quality, so we're not doing it now. So it's also kind of like, well, what are you saying about the state of your own game if you're like, Sony didn't want us? So I'm pretty sure they'll get to 1.0 on Xbox, and we'll see it showing up on PS4. Which is who knows when that is, man. If I was Microsoft, I'd be trying to throw all the money at them and be like, you know what, get this to 1.0 because this is ridiculous. All right, you guys need to make a better version of this. Any more thoughts on this, Dalan? We move on to the next thing. I just thought that was, you know, I like the Sony strict on quality, so that means we'll at least get good quality stuff if it's up on their system.
I mean, PlayStation's been trying to have their quality way above their game from the get-go. I mean, I think Xbox 360 was still using DVDs, while the PS3 was using Blu-rays at the time. So I think they've always had a higher standard for quality as it is. So
yeah, that is
not new news to me.
You know what? That is a fair point. And I mean, Sony has always been, even when it was electronic. I know they've kind of shifted focus a little bit into video games, but you know, they still make TVs and they make different home electronics. But yeah, they've always kind of have been about a high bar, high quality. You know, they kind of fumbled a bit on the PS2, which I think that's kind of what bit them in the end, was that they were trying to hit such a high bar, and the hubris that they're coming off of the PS2, and they're like, we're good. We're all right. We're gonna do this. People will get a second job. So I think that ultimately
People
bit them.
get a second job.
But
I they said that.
I believe it was Kaz Hirai or one. No, actually, I think it was a guy who actually engineered the PS3 to make it as difficult as it was. But you know, and it's sort of the Wii thing too, right? Nintendo was coming off the hubris of the Wii being like the most successful system of all time, and they're like, oh, we'll just call it Wii U. We'll be fine. And it's like, no, 12 million copies sold after 4 years. You're not fine at all. You had to reinvent the wheel again with the Switch till you kind of came to that success again.
People were so confused.
Yeah, so you know it's not inconsistent with what Sony has done, but you know if we were in this same stage during PS3 era, oh yeah, we would have seen PUBG regardless of the state.
Yeah, exactly. You know? That's what I'm talking about. But as of right now, I personally don't think Sony should be really holding off on getting PUBG on their system. But at the same time, I understand their reason for doing it.
But I mean, they have versions of it. But they have versions of it. You know, they got Battle Royale, which is a free like mode. It doesn't count. It's not PUBG proper, but there's imitators and there's imitators to follow. So PUBG, come on, get with it. You know, even on the Switch, even on the Switch, there will be a PUBG Lite. So there will be a PUBG something, but I doubt it'll come from PUBG Corporation anytime soon because, I mean, the state of their game now. So
they just need to get on the band.
But what else do we got, Dalan?
All right, so one of our favorite subjects, one of my favorite subjects that we could talk about for way too long, but let's not let's not keep too much time on it. Is Destiny 2. Once again, we're talking about Destiny 2, but in this case, it is about an expansion that's supposed to be coming out. I believe they tentatively in March because they accidentally leaked the fact that the second expansion was going to be coming out. They put it on the PlayStation Network for a little too long. I guess one day was too long.
Someone will screen cap it. Someone will screen cap something. Somebody's just ready to screen cap something, a reveal or a leak.
Yeah, and with it, it actually came with a brief description of what the new expansion was going to be like. Talking about we're going to explore the frigid Vale of Mars, a new destination that conceals the mysterious Clovis Grove and Charlemagne's Vault. Charlemagne being the new boss, apparently. But we'd be going underground to try and free Rasputin again. I know the people who don't really play Destiny don't know who Rasputin is, but that's fine. He's basically an AI that you need to save. But they obviously have some new story coming with it.
We're saving Rasputin again.
Rasputin. You remember the bunker? We had to go into the war line.
Yeah. We had to go into the bunker. Man, Destiny 1 was pretty good. I'm getting nostalgic about it. I mean, yeah, it was a kind of a throwaway mission, but it's like, man, you got to hear the sounds of Rasputin. You have to go underground. You have to there's this whole thing, this whole mysticism that's missing from, Destiny 2, unfortunately for now.
Well, Carlos, the way you said that, you got to remember that Rasputin, or at least the Warmind bunkers, there were multiple of them, which is why there's one on Earth. And in this case, there's one on Mars. And I assume that it's a different Rasputin. So it's going to come with a new story. New battle arenas. Apparently, we're going to have a new enemy faction. I don't know what that means, but it's probably something like dropping the Taken. I know how much you love your Taken. We'll have some new bosses.
Unless it is taken.
Unless it is taken, just like the chair. Unless the chair is taken.
Unless it is taken, yeah.
But I'm not sure if Bungie's doing it on purpose to be leaking these type of things. I mean, do you think that they're leaking these things on purpose? Because it's like the third time something like this has happened.
You could say that, but I think sometimes what it is that stuff is like a placeholder. So, it should be out within like the next couple months. I think it should be out during March, right? I mean, this is all leaked. It's not confirmed.
According to the PlayStation Store when it was up there, it said release.
So what I'm saying, it's that it's some of this stuff maybe is a placeholder, and they're holding their slot or holding their URL or whatever it is, where they got to put it through for Sony to know about it and put it on their network. So I think that's what it is. Somebody flipped the switch on accident. It's like, ooh, hold up, we're not ready. We don't even know what's going in it. We're not sure. So one of the things I did notice is there was no mention of a raid. So that's a little concerning. But there's got to be at least a raid layer, right? There's got to be, and based on what
I
we saw,
assume there was going to be a raid.
A full raid, I hope, but I don't know. Remember, we have those 4 nodes next to the original raid for Destiny 2. So I don't know, man. I think we'll get another raid layer, and you know, based on how they did it, it shouldn't be that hard because this last raid layer is really just it really is a mini raid. It's like one mini raid, a raid as an exploratory section, and then here you go, here's a boss. So instead of a regular raid where you get multiple exploratory levels and multiple bosses, you know, this raid layers, from what we've seen so far, is just here's a area you explore, a couple puzzles you solve, and then you get to the boss. So, but it didn't seem like that was leaked. So we'll see, man. I'm pretty sure we'll start hearing about it some more. But I'm pumped. But like I said during our last episode, I'm kind of like I'm pumped as much as I am pumped about some DLC for another game where it's like, all right, I'm playing for a week and then I'm good. And then I'll move on.
Well, that's probably gonna be how it turns out to be anyway, because that's just been the way that the game has been rolling out. But they actually did promise end game content that would keep people in the game. They were promising that they were going to be fixing that issue with the next expansion, and I hope they do that because they've been promising that since Destiny 1. So let's see what happens.
Yeah. Well, Destiny 1 was okay. I mean, you did look forward to some of these draws, but at least you had more of an idea, where now it's kind of a lottery system. It's like, okay, let me pull the lever. It was more of a, what do we call it, a slot machine type of thing, where it's like, all right, here we go. I'm putting my tokens in. We'll see if I get something good back.
Are you over there playing Pacheco, Carlos?
Quite possibly. That's how it feels like when I'm playing Destiny 2. So, but we'll move on to the next one. This one was kind of a big last week. It was kind of like during the holidays, so it's kind of upsetting that this would happen. But it's about the false. So a charge for a false alarm charge has been filed for to 25-year-old Tyler Barris, who's suspected of making a fatal swatting prank after having an argument over a Call of Duty match bit. So I don't know if you guys heard about this, but last week, somebody was actually killed by police because they were responding to a fake call. So it's what they call swatting. According to Rolling Stone, authorities in Los Angeles arrested Barris on Friday. Wichita police say they received a call on Thursday from someone claiming they had killed their father, doused the home in gas, and planned to set it on fire with their mother and brother inside. Police went to the given address, where they found 28-year-old Andrew Finch. Finch was fatally shot during the incident. After the shooting, police discovered 4 other people inside, but no body or any hostages. During the investigation, we learned that an unknown individual had placed this police false call. Deputy Wichita Police Chief Troy Livingston said during a press conference, "We believe this is a case of swatting, which is the act of deceiving emergency services into sending a police response to another person's address." And my question, Dalan, it's a tragic thing, and it's happened a few times already. But it's one of those things that makes you think. Who's ultimately at fault here? Is it the police procedure, the swatter himself, and is there a solution? What do you think, Dale?
Well, in this case, they didn't actually give too many details of how the swatting went down, and I don't think there's any videos out there of how it actually occurred. And of course, putting somebody's death on live TV or live YouTube or something like that is not the greatest thing to do. It's definitely
as we learned from Mr. What's his name? Paul Wall, or no? What?
Paul Walker?
No. It was a guy that went into Japanese suicide forest and got lambasted for it.
And how about the person? And how about the person that was doing their own little live video from the top of some Japanese tower and then fell to their doom?
Yeah. So going back to this,
but the fact being is that without actually knowing how it went down, you don't know what the 28-year-old, I forgot his name currently. I apologize about that. But without actually knowing Andrew Finch, without knowing what Andrew was doing at the time, it's kind of hard to actually say who was at fault, because you don't know what he was holding at the time. You don't know if he got rowdy with the police as soon as they came in. So
some of the details, and I didn't give you the details on here, but part of the details was, I believe he came out of the house and he was complying. He had his hands up and everything, but I believe at some point he kind of did reach for something in his pocket. So it's one of those things where it's an unfortunate thing where it's like where it's like how do you avoid it? Because as police, it's an emergency service. They're they can't treat every single call and try to validate the reality, you know, if it's real or not. They're supposed to respond to a serious sounding call. You know, it's not like these things haven't happened where, you know, I have my wife, or I have this person, you need to come here now. You know, it's not like it hasn't happened. So it's one of those things where it's like, you know, what do you do, right? And ultimately, of course, it's the swatter's fault because he's being a jerk.
Yeah,
you know, he's being like,
that's definitely the ultimate.
Come on,
The
and,
ultimate
you know,
issue.
and I think the biggest thing. I'll let you go, Dylan, but the biggest thing, I believe this guy wasn't involved. This was a fake address given to the police. Like, it was just the address picked out, or I believe so. So my understanding, this was over a Call of Duty, like $1.50 bet or a $2 bet, where one of the guys, you know, they had an argument or whatever it was, and the guy that ultimately did the SWAT call, you know, the other guy told him, is like, oh, this is my address, try to find, you know, whatever. It was just kind of egging him on, right? So the other guy did it. He went ahead and called a SWAT call into his bogus address. So that's the nastiest part about this, man, is that this guy wasn't even involved. He wasn't even part of the match or the bet. So they just swatted a completely fake address that they just came up out of nowhere.
They swatted a stranger. That's sad. I hadn't read any of the news article. I'm basically getting news from you, which I decided I was going to do for myself, see how it would come out of your mouth. But in this case, just hearing it, I'm like, man, that is sad. I mean, me being a black man versus police, don't get me wrong, I have a certain type of respect for police. But it's not like I'm not scared of police when they come rolling through with guns.
Well, yeah, I'm
black. I don't know what they're going to do. So it's a little scary. And then when you have a bunch of police officers already getting called to a household where they think dangerous things are going to occur, everybody's on edge to begin with. So that makes it even worse and harder for anybody to respond properly to a situation like that. So whether or not the police were at fault, or the person that they went and evidently swatted was doing anything that was suspicious, the fact is the police shouldn't have been there in the first place, and the swatter never should have did that. It's just a wrong thing to do out in the world.
Yeah, it's one of those unfortunate things that you're like, you don't know necessarily what the solution is, because as police, they kind of have to respond to calls as if they're authentic calls. They can't just be like, we got to validate this first. Like, man, in those few minutes, something could have happened or something did happen. So, you know, ultimately, the good thing is, you know, it's kind of like all these things that happen. Ultimately, you hope that at least justice is served. And this guy's charged with false alarm. I don't know how big of a thing it is, man. I mean, he got somebody killed, you know, and
it's a federal offense, man.
You know,
it is a federal offense.
Yeah, so we'll see. Well, you know, we'll see how that plays out, and we'll update you guys. And I guess he was in LA, he was in Los Angeles, and he has to go to Kansas, so he waived his extradition. I guess you have extradition rights, like, you know, you can't just be transferred. So I guess he waived that off. I'm sure it's one of those, you know, place to get a lighter sentence, you know. So he's being waived off to Kansas City or wherever, you know, to Wichita, I'm assuming, to be tried. And you know, we'll see how it pans out. It's an unfortunate thing, but
maybe he realized what he did was wrong, and he's hoping he gets arrested. He probably hopes that he goes to jail. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a terrible thing. Dalan, and it's unfortunate that it happened, like, you know, during the week, like, of Christmas, man, and like holidays, like. It's terrible, and I'm sure that's when this, you know, it's when this type of multiplayer activity maybe kind of spikes, because people are out of school, or, you know, they got free time where they're like, I'm gonna play some bets while I play Call of Duty or whatever, and you know what, I'm also gonna do this. So, well, it's an unfortunate thing.
That partially doesn't help the story that I'm actually bringing up next.
No, it's not a good transition, but
it's not a great transition, but it's just a truth, because I had a whole mindset going into this piece of news, and as we were
we're going into our honorable mentions, right?
Yeah. So going into our honorable mentions, and the first one, I was going to make it quick, but it might be a little longer than expected. The Entertainment Software Association, or ESA, apparently they don't like one of the classifications that the World Health Organization has recently made, because they wanted to create the gaming disorder and hazardous gaming classifications for gamers out there. The ESA said for the World Organization that the World Health Organization knows that common sense and objective research prove video games are not addictive. and putting that official label on them is recklessly trivialized, and it trivializes real mental health issues like depression and social anxiety disorders, which deserve treatment and the full attention of the medical community. So the first gaming disorder, the gaming disorder, is categorized under disorders because because of addictive behaviors and substance use. Because people, they like to sit in front of their games for like hours on end and probably smoke some pot at the same time. I don't know what they're actually doing, but but apparently that they consider that to be placed alongside gambling disorders and varying degrees of alcohol and drug addictions. I believe we recently had a conversation about Australia trying to. I can't remember. Oh, it was about the loot boxes and the gambling system apparently.
Yeah.
So I think that the WHO, World Health Organization, or in short, WHO, I like that abbreviation. As they're called WHO. I'm probably not going to call them WHO because then people are going to get confused.
Okay, you can move on. You can move on.
Sorry.
Come on.
I'm sorry. That one cracks me. But anyways, there's the drug addictions part, but it's the fact that they have the disorders, the gaming disorder. And then the second one being the hazardous gaming that deals with activities that increase the risk of harmful or physical or mental health consequences to themselves or other players. So in that aspect, that's why I was saying the previous story was kind of sad, is rolling into this story. It kind of looks like it's a true statement to actually create the hazardous gaming statement or classification, because apparently it is a real thing. But the fact that they actually created it a part of the World Health Organization, I don't know if they actually should be classified as a type of disorder. It's just people being assholes. So excuse my language. There was no better way to say it.
So just to kind of top it off, I didn't look into it too much, but I thought it was interesting because the ESA is supposed to kind of represent video games as a whole, and I'm sure there are members from video game companies that maybe even provide funding or whatever it is to it. So I always think it's interesting the statements they make, because before this, they actually made a public statement saying that, thanking Trump that for the new tax benefits and all these other things. They're like, oh, thanks to the administration, we're going to be able to get more people working. We're going to get more incentives of that. So I'm always interested to see kind of their point of view, because as far as I can see, they don't play politics. So, as far as I can tell, they sort of, of course, there's going to be people that disagree, right, politically or otherwise. But it's always interesting to see what the ESA does, because it is supposed to represent the video game industry as a whole. But why is there why are they not okay with WHO classifying gaming disorders?
Oh, yeah, I did mention that. It's the fact that it takes away from other real disorders that actually need to have their full attention. Okay. So it's having those type of classifications. I don't know if they're warranted. Well, I was going to ask you, do you believe that these two particular classifications are warranted? I mean, I've seen many people, or at least a lot of my friends, break controllers out of frustration, but I don't know if this is really...
I mean, there is it's just like anything, right? But I guess maybe the objection here is that maybe gaming is being considered as a thing you consume, right? As the thing that you're kind of like, oh, if you do this, you're going to be in trouble. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's a slippery slope type of thing. But I mean, even if it is considered that, right, an intoxicating material, if you want to refer to that, it's like, do it in moderation. Do it in moderation. And it's like, it shouldn't be like gaming, just like any other hobby, just like any other thing you could be interested in. Just be careful that you don't kind of dig yourself into a thing where it's like, I need to do it. I need to always be doing this. I need to, if I don't do it, I'm going to start having, panic attacks or whatever it is. So it's one of those things that, maybe as far as the ESA sees it, it's like, well, you're kind of bringing a stigma where we're already trying to get away from the stigma that games are just for adolescent children. We're trying to get away from that it's actually something that people do as an activity, as a distraction, as another form of entertainment. So maybe classifying these type of disorders, an outlet where it's like, it's not, why are you saying that these are disorders? So I haven't really looked into it too much, but as far as what I can tell, maybe that's what it is. And I say the same thing. It's like, don't treat it as it's your everything. Have interest in everything, in different things, and you know, go out, exercise, and do
Yeah,
other
for people that are
activities,
addicted
watch
to video
other things.
games, love TVs, and love their video games. I mean, it's nice to have the video game and have it as a little sidebar to be able to actually go to and have as an outlet, but
Yeah.
live your life. I mean, you
Yeah.
don't have to
So
be stuck in front of a TV. You have control over your own destiny in this aspect. You are not controlled by the video game console. You don't have to be watched by the Kinect. You don't have to be
yeah.
plugged into your PlayStation all the time. Even though the VR may be great, you don't have to always have it on. This period. You
Yeah.
have other things in life that you could actually be doing. Go parasailing. I don't
Yeah,
know.
so we'll go parasailing. Start to try some of that. Try golfing. Yeah, so we'll move on. This is, you know what, I just noticed in our rundown that we have a kind of positive notes, and then we kind of bring it down a little bit. But do you want to bring up yours actually, the next one, and then we'll try to lighten it up a bit, or
Okay, you want to go
you
that
know,
way? All right, then. Well,
and
we're
then
gonna
I'll come
skip one
back.
and then run back. All right,
Yeah.
so the next one I had that I wanted to bring up was IGN. IGN fired their editor in chief, Steve Butts. I mean, he's been under investigation for the past 2 months for workplace misconduct, which was basically a harassment charge. I mean, we got a new it was another harassment charge that showed up, but they sent him home for 2 months because, as one employee quoted for IGN, he was the elephant in the room. Apparently, Steve was walking around acting like the office workers were making his life difficult when he was the one that was actually going around harassing other people. So they ended up sending him home for 2 months while they did the investigation. And then they decided, time to go. They were like, "Bye, Felicia." Send him on. They sent him on his way. They fired him.
So it's kind of one of the latest things that where it's like, you know, the culture shift, which I think is fine. I think it's good, man. You got to get people are being disrespectful to other employees, women, men included, whoever it is. It's just you know, you got to say, you know, bye. Yeah, exactly like you said, bye, Felicia. So, you know, it's one of those things that, you know, we're being responsible, and people are accountable for their actions, you know. So it's one of those things. I hadn't heard too much about this, so they must have kept it a little hush hush until it's like finally like,
Well,
oh, hey, this is what's been happening.
I'm pretty sure we did talk about it. We did touch base on it previously when we were talking about some of the harassment things that were coming out. But one thing I ended up reading up on this one is apparently Steve got ousted in the middle of one of their meetings. So it wasn't like behind closed doors. I went and told my manager that I was being harassed. It was, we were in the middle of a meeting. You've been harassing me. Stop it. It was out loud.
Oh wow,
So
you need to control yourself. Yeah, so you know, it's a sign that it kind of affects all industries, and it includes the video game industry as well. So it's kind of one of those things like, yeah, let's clean it up a bit. And you know, that's I guess it's a good thing to hear that, you know, you got to be accountable. You got to be held accountable for your actions, and just don't be a jerk. You know, so we'll go to, you know, according to Sarah Needleman from the Wall Street Journal, she says Nintendo says it sold more than 4.8 million units of Switch between March 3rd and December 31st in US, outpacing Wii that sold 4 million during the same time frame. Now my question is, is it a good sign that it'll ultimately beat out Wii sales, Dalan?
Yes, being that they're making their little comeback and actually creating something that people want to buy. That's what it is. I mean, when the Wii U came, the Wii came out, you know that their sales were dismal, but just abysmal, just terrible, low, just not anywhere near the bar that they wanted to get to. And the Wii was like this little skyrocket that they had, and having that type of production value and people wanting the system for Nintendo, that's a great thing to have again. Because I remember when the Super Nintendo was out, everybody wanted it. Getting Nintendo 64 dropped, everybody wanted it. GameCube dropped, almost everybody wanted it.
Yeah, we're getting back to it, you know, we're getting you know, and I think this was Nintendo just kind of proves to Nintendo, you know, they revolutionized gaming in a way. I know, of course, if you were a hardcore gamer, you weren't necessarily the biggest fan of the Wii, but it did get a lot of people playing that normally would have not have played otherwise. So, so it's interesting to see them go from the Wii that kind of completely revolutionized gaming in that sense, where it started having waggle controls into the mix. And then they went to the Wii U, where it's like, oh, okay, what is this? And then we get the actualization of the Wii U with the Switch, where it's like, it is a Wii U, but you can actually take it with you now. So it's one of those things where it's like, well, they're successful now and they're outpacing the Wii. So that means, you know, they'll continue to sell gangbusters. And I know You weren't able to find a Switch, right? We were talking about earlier how you wanted. We went to several.
Everywhere.
We went to several stores and we couldn't find it, right? So you're gonna have to find a way to grab one. I mean, you do have a game that's just sitting there unplayed. But besides that, so it's one of those things where it's like we'll see what Nintendo does next. I mean, maybe because I know a lot of analysts and I've heard people talking about it that it is like the Switch is creating a completely new category because it's not competing with your cell phone and it's not competing with the PlayStation 4. It's its own new way of playing, a new hybrid where it's like, you know, people don't really care. You don't see them like, why don't these graphics look as good as on my PlayStation 4 or my Xbox One X, the most powerful system ever? People are not worried about it. So
they're not worried about graphics. They're worried about gameplay in this case, which is what this
honestly,
is a new revolution for.
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know if Nintendo can get away with having the Switch be like incremental upgrades. I mean, all the other systems are going that way. So maybe we do see a Switch 2 and that one's just as successful because it's going to be definitely a bump up graphics wise. And then that's the system after that, maybe they do got to revolutionize the game again. So we'll see what Nintendo has to do. But apparently revolutions work for them, you know, so.
Well,
we'll see what they do going forward.
Now, I actually have one of those. I can't think of the word that you were using for it, but I have another piece of thing that I want to throw in there for you. So
we're already going long, Dalan. So I hope you're the one saying we should keep it short.
Yeah, I know. But this is one I just had to bring up. Okay, so since we're on the conversation of the Switch, there's a modding team out there called Team Execute. Okay, and Team Executor, they're known for actually modding systems like the PSP and the Wii and things like that. And apparently, with the new firmware update 3.0 for the Switch out in December and a copy of Pokken Tournament DX, they've found a way to mod the Switch already. Now, they haven't actually released the firmware yet, but apparently it's already moddable. They just haven't actually released it, and they plan on releasing it sometime later this year. And I'm interested to see how many people are going to be walking around with a modded Switch.
Well, you might not know, right? You don't have to actually physically crack it open or anything, right? It's kind of like a firmware. It's like a firmware crack, right, or something like that. Which should work up to the point that you want to play Rocket League, and Nintendo will force you to update if you want to play online, and it's like it'll make it unusable. But yeah, I mean, it's cool. It's cool to hear, and you know.
That's what I'm saying, is that the way that they actually cracked it, it seems that it would still work with the online and updates that would actually be coming out anywhere thereafter.
Yeah, I doubt it. I doubt it because the way they're doing it is, unless they are actually asking you to physically open it up, they're doing it through whatever firmware the Switch is currently using. So if you want to get online, you know, when you go online, it checks your system, or it's like they're giving you an update, and sometimes they give you updates because they're trying to quote unquote help you out. Other times it's because they're trying to close those exploits out. So next time you want to update, Nintendo figures out that it's modded or that it's exploits. They're like, oh, well, do you want to play online? You have to update. And that update makes it so it's unusable. That's how it works. That's exactly how it works. Now, the reason, you know, it's exactly why on the PSP, if you want to get the mod to put these extra games on it, so to speak, you need to use a certain type of firmware, or they update the firmware for it, and they tell you can't use past PSP 6.0 or whatever it is. So, but yeah, it's good. I mean, people are gonna do it, and like I said before, this thing, the Switch is basically an Android Shield, which are an Android is completely moddable. So if you're taking an Android system, you can mod it. But you know, if you wanted to continue to function, if you want to continue to go online, then it'll only function for so long. Or want to update your your Switch. That's the other option. But
I just think it's an awesome fact that somebody already figured out how to mod it. All right, so I'm gonna
they do. They're always working on it. So next one on this list, so I like this next one actually. We'll keep it short, but I like how Nexon, which is the publisher for Lawbreakers, which is from I think Lawbreakers is made from Cliffy B. So it's the guy that the creator of Gears of War. He's the creator of Gears of War. He made a game called Lawbreakers. That's the one he's currently working on. I'm pretty sure he's going to move on based on it not being successful. But Nexon, the publisher, blames PUBG for Lawbreakers' lack of success. Nexon said during a recent earnings call, "We had very high expectations for its launch. However, the timing of its launch turned out to be unfortunate. Specifically, the blockbuster PC online game PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds came out right about the same time, making the market environment very tough for first-person shooters in general and for lawbreakers. So it's kind of like, I think it's a fair reason / excuse to say that it's a crowded marketplace, but who's ever saying, maybe lawbreakers should have been good. But I don't know. I don't,
Maybe they should have made it better. Just make it better.
Do you think it's fair for them? Because right now you just laugh, right? So I'm betting you laugh because like, wait, what? Out of left field, what does PUBG have to do with this? But
you know what it reminds me of? The story that you just said. You actually reminded me of the Papa John story and the NFL. Now they like to blame the NFL for their poor sales because they were out there taking a knee. I don't think that's the case at all. They ain't got nothing to do with it. That's just make better pizza. That's it.
It's one of those things where it's sort of similar to we talked about it before, right? But you're actually bringing more attention to it than people otherwise would have. It's like, I mean, why would you take it out on Papa John's or what? It's just pizza. It's like, all right, I guess you advertise on NFL or on the network or whenever the games are on, but it's like, this has nothing to do with the other. Like Lawbreakers, I understand. Yeah, maybe it came out during the same time, but PUBG affected everything. And Call of Duty, hey, how about this? PUBG, because PUBG's been out since I believe March or April. So in short amount of time, you got to respect the success it's had in such a short amount of time. But okay, well, the Switch was successful. That sold. Call of Duty is like a return to form. That's a first-person shooter, and it's been like, it's the most successful Call of Duty since I believe it was Black Ops 3 or whatever. So it's like, there's successful games coming out and they're selling, so it's kind of like, I don't know. I don't buy it. I don't buy this whole because of PUBG. Because PUBG, even till now, it still affects games because entertainment time. It's sucking up that time that people would otherwise devote to a different game. So I just thought it was a funny thing. It's like, let's play PUBG. And it's like, you know what? It's unfortunate. It actually looks like a decent game from what I've seen. It looks like a sort of it is a first-person shooter where you swing around, but it's like it's not the same game, like PUBG is a survival type. You could play it in third person and first person.
I'd actually be more understanding if Counter-Strike was actually complaining about PUBG, but I don't know about Lawbreakers.
Yeah, but Lawbreakers is like, it's unfortunate that it's not successful. And, at the very least, I believe it was Cliff Blazinski that was talking about it on his Twitter. He said, look, we're still going to give people their updates. And, I think Kotaku was reporting. I was like, yeah, you're going to continue giving updates to the 12 people that are still playing it. So it's an unfortunate thing. But anyway, speaking of things that are going to be discontinued, Dalan, what is going to be? What are we learning?
Things that are going to be discontinued. The Kinect adapter will no longer be available. It sold for an extra. I think it was like an extra 2 years with the consoles as they were still coming out. I think they sold
with the Xbox One. It was bundled. Yeah, no, it was bundled with Xbox One when it first came out, when they were doing the PS3 thing that they're like, you're going to get a second job. Nobody ever said that, of course. They're not dumb enough to say that anymore. But it was basically, that was their plan, right? It's like 360 blew the doors off of the PS3. We were so successful. The hubris, all these companies, man, it's like their third system. They're always going to fail.
But the Kinect needed to die. That's it. That's it. I don't think it was more place there.
No, I mean, it was a decent technology. Even so, I think it's still a decent technology, but it's, it had its time, and its time was 2010 to mid 2010. So, it had its time, and
that short time, that small period, that little window.
It had its time, and the problem is, and I kind of got it was Microsoft's play into like trying to make it even more ubiquitous, because it's one of those things where you can release hardware, like say the PS4, even with the PSVR, right? That could be a recent example. You release a PS4, right? But if you didn't anything that you didn't launch with in that box, you can't expect users to have, right? So Microsoft was like, okay, look, the system's $500. It's not PS3 $600. But it is $500. But it's well, you know what? I think it might have been $400. Whatever it was because they added the Kinect in there as the sort of value. You're like, we're giving you a Kinect and we're giving you an Xbox, but it didn't work out. They had to. No, I doubt it was $450. They never do dumb like halfway prices like
Are
that.
you sure?
So it's either $400.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm 100% sure. Once they do discounts, maybe yes. Down the line, a year down the line, 2 years down the line. Like I think the Xbox One S is like at 180 now or something like that. But originally no, and that's really what drove up the cost. That drove up the cost and all this dumb DRM stuff. But yeah, it was the Kinect, man, and they were saying like we got to make it ubiquitous. We have to include it in every box. It didn't pan out. Eventually, they did away with it. They were able to lower the price of the system, and now they're like, "We're done. We're not making them. We're not nothing.
We're done." They needed to die. That's what I'm saying. It just wasn't the greatest accessory in the world. I mean, it was great for some games, like I was saying, Just Dance. That game had its time, but Michael Jackson Dance, they had all these other dance games come out. Yeah. That was pretty much the only reason that people even got to Kinect were for those dance games, and not a lot of people played those dance games. As a matter of fact, I don't know anybody who really used their Kinect.
I used it
for a very short period.
I use it pretty extensively, but it's also I have a daughter. I think for kids, for families, it's good because you're jumping around, you're motioning. Or actually, come to think of it, I'll probably connect it, and we'll get that going at some point. But I mean, the technology is good. It's fine, but it's like it's not something that people can realistically use. It's not necessarily a mass product, and that's what they were hoping for, and it didn't pan out, and they unbundled it from the Xbox, and now they're trying to kind of crawl their way back into this console war with PlayStation. But it was its time. It had its time, and it's going away. And you know what? I might be able to get like $300, I believe, from mine if I sell it standalone. Is what I was
going to say. Do it.
The prices are ridiculous.
Get rid of it.
The prices are ridiculous for it. So the last one to end on for our first episode of the new year, we were trying to keep it short. We were talking about there's not enough news, but with me and Dalan, we never stop talking. So we apologize. But the last one. So Mega Man 7, it was actually recently confirmed that it was rushed to market in only 3 months. Mega Man 11 producer Kazuhiro Tsuchiya recently revealed to Game Informer that the game was put together in 3 months, and that it was a quote, a really, or start quote, open quote, a really difficult time, end quote. So my question, though, I know Mega Man 7 was the lone SNES Mega Man release besides the X series that was popular during the Super NES. But it was actually considered a step back because we've seen several Mega Man X during the Super Nintendo era, and then all of a sudden you don't have wall jumps in Mega Man 7. So they kind of went back a little bit. But did you play Mega Man 7? I know you're not the biggest Mega Man fan, right?
Wait, what? No, you're crazy. I did play the Mega Mans. I just didn't really beat any of the Mega Mans.
No, I said you're not the biggest fan. That's all I said. I don't know what you thought I accused you of.
Yeah, you accused me of not being a fan of Mega Man. But no, I love me some Mega Man. And
but if you didn't beat any of the game, hold up. So you didn't beat Mega Man, then you're not. How are you a fan? You haven't beat the original 3 Mega Mans, or the original 1 and 2.
Calm down. Don't get a hurry.
You were offended.
No, I don't want to see a vein popping out of your forehead.
No, you were offended that I accused you of something, and then now you're like, wait, I should have accused you of that in the first place. So yes, you're not a real Mega Man fan. But
hold up, I played all those Mega Man games. I played all the original Mega Man games. They were hard, man. They were very difficult.
Of course they're hard. Of course they're hard.
That was the problem.
Dalan, my history with good video games doesn't extend that far back, but I've beaten 1 and 2 at least.
No, I couldn't even beat 1. I was getting destroyed. I'm not gonna get into the.
Do you have any history with Mega Man 7 or anything like that?
Okay, look, I was playing through the other Mega Man games, and then I hit 7, and I was like, "What happened to this series?" And I was like, "Man, okay, I'm gonna put this down." And then, of course, years later, 8 came out, and they really revamped themselves, and I was very happy to see that because 7 was probably the worst one out of the series. And then for some reason, they did the same thing with Mega Man X. They went through Mega Man X 1 through 6.
Well, we don't need the whole history, but Dalan, okay, but does it explain why Mega Man 7 was kind of now it's confirmation? It's like we did it in 3 months. We did it in ET time. We did it in ET time. Does it explain based on what you played of 7?
that might actually explain why they didn't have as much stuff as they did in the original games, or at least in the other 6 previous to that. But I'm wondering
no,
now.
That's not what they're talking about. They're talking about 7 specifically, Dalan, that they made.
I know what you meant, and I know what I said. I understand the fact that 7 probably had way less time put into it than any of the other Mega Man games, where all the other Mega Man games had plenty of good content and new things that you can actually do with your character.
Or maybe it just seemed like it was more thought out, right? I'm
yeah, that's what I mean.
More thought out. Yeah.
All the other ones were more thought out. Then they hit 7, and they were like, let's not think about it. Let's just churn out a Mega Man and see if it sells, which it did, but it was a terrible Mega Man, and so people just were mad at it. Then
you know what? Now that I know this, so I kind of want to go back to Mega Man 7 and see, it's like, oh, okay, what's? I don't think I've played that one actually. So when I was like, oh, okay, what are people complaining about? It's like, all right.
No, see, what you got to then what you have to do is you have to play Mega Man 6 for a little bit, maybe get past the first or second boss, then play Mega Man 7 and see how different it is, because it is a significant difference once you get to the second boss, because you feel it. You feel it, and that's how I felt.
Well, that's the end of our first episode of the year. I am your host again, Carlos Macias. You can find me at Aduce Clean on Twitter. Dalan, where can they find you?
You can find Dalan Kirkwood. I'm the other guy. If you haven't found me on Twitter already, there I am on Twitter as _Zacia _XEXIA _ yes, appreciated, Carlos.
Yeah, you're the other guy. I like that. Dalan's the other guy.
I'm the other guy.
So I'm you know what? I did interrupt you. What were you gonna say about something about the series? And at some point it's gonna cut out. The broadcast is gonna stop, and the music's gonna play. So be quick, Dalan.
Oh yeah, I appreciate that. That's the fact that I was going through Mega Man 1 through 6, hit 7. They messed it up. They rushed it. I'm thinking that maybe they did that with Mega Man X. They went 1 through 6, then they hit 7. They rushed it. They just threw stuff in there, and they ruined the game.
Anyways, thanks for that piece of history. I thought you were gonna go into the X Games and all this.
No, I wasn't. That's what I was saying.
It felt like you were gonna do that. It felt like that's what you were gonna do. All right, see you guys next time.